Okay, well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining. You have been witness to the very first AMA series. AMA, as you know, stands for Ask Me Anything. And Mike Cadieux is on the show today. So welcome, Mike.
Hi everybody. Good to see you all.
Mike is going to be the unfortunate bearer of our questions, because my goal for this is to put him on the hot seat as much as we can. And so you get the opportunity to ask him any question that you want. Keep it HR appropriate, please. Any question other than the non-HR appropriate questions are going to be fair game. So if you have anything related to Procurement Foundry that you want to ask him, anything that Spend Logic Group is doing, any trends that he's seeing in the industry right now, gaps that he's seeing in the marketplace, anything that comes to procurement, supply chain, indirect, direct overall, those are the types of questions that we definitely want to see. I've got some guideline questions that I'll get us started with. But what I want to do is direct you, first of all, this is a pretty neat tool that Zoom has. On the bottom of your screen, you're going to see a little status bar. That status bar should have a little Q&A button. That Q&A button allows you to ask questions directly to Cadieux and to myself. I'm going to be managing the questions from my end. And I'll be sort of trying to weed through as many of them as I can, but don't hold back. What I want you to do is try and pepper him with as many questions as possible. Our goal is to try and get him reeling as much as we can so that we can get as much value as possible out of this conversation. We've got a full hour basically blocked off of his time, which is fantastic. Mike, thank you so much for sparing up your time. And we're going to try and maximize that as much as possible. The goal of these events is to try and extract as much value as we can out of any guest. But look at that, he's stretching out. Stretch it out, Cadieux. Try and extract as much value as we can out of all of our guests. So we've got an amazing lineup already for the first 6 months set out for these. Mike has graciously offered to be the first test subject, and we get to ask him anything that we want. So we're going to do that right now. Mike, are you ready?
Absolutely. I'm excited to get started. I'd love to hear what everybody's thinking about, what questions you have, whether or not you're a member of the Procurement Foundry and you're coming in from the Foundry, or the links that we had outside of the Foundry out on LinkedIn and other places. So if you want to ask about what the Foundry is, or I don't know what my favorite cab color is, I don't really care. Just let's shoot it. I'm ready to go, man.
Awesome. Okay, first question. I'm going to be the first one. I get to do that because I'm the host. What the heck, man? Like, how did this all get started? Procurement Foundry, how many members do we have now?
As of this morning, I think we were over about 563 members.
Unreal.
There's a bunch of different counts there. So as you know, there's a 3-step process to this whole thing now. You got to join through the website now, through procurementfoundry.com. You get a membership request, which is free membership into the Foundry, and then we go through a vetting process to make sure that you're not trying to sell us something, or a business development guy for one of the tools or something like that, ladies. And then once you've been vetted and approved, you then receive a welcome packet from us, inviting you into the Foundry, which is Slack based, so you can log into your Slack account or set one up, and then you're in the Foundry. If to give you an answer of how big are we right now, the real answer is we've got 563 members who have gone through the whole process and who are actively involved and engaged in the Foundry right now. We've got 287 additional members who have been vetted and approved and who have been given their sent their invitations but haven't acted on them yet. So we give them about a week, and then we follow up with them to see where they are in the process. And then we have probably another 150 people in the last couple of days who have requested entrance through the membership request that I go through. Right now, I'm personally vetting every single person, which leaves not a lot of time for sleep. But if you add the whole thing together, we're just under about 1,000 people already.
Who needs sleep, man?
Yeah.
Who needs sleep?
Sleep is overrated.
Sleep is totally overrated.
You know,
you could do all of that, right?
When I had a corporate job, now I'm running.
So, I mean, look, like, why? Why create Procurement Foundry? What I mean, you had the Real Deal LinkedIn thing, and that was great. But like, why transform that into Procurement Foundry? What was the reason? Why
Yeah,
did we
so
move away from LinkedIn?
yeah, I don't think we've moved away from LinkedIn. What's really interesting is that we're starting to actually get membership requests for the LinkedIn, which is the original group. Which, by the way, if you have a LinkedIn pin, hold those because they'll be valuable someday. Um, I think the LinkedIn's going to continue to operate, although I think that the problem is that I mean we started this thing off kind of as a small little think tank workshop study group with we wanted like 30 or 40 people in a group, and it turned into 1,200, and we kind of broke LinkedIn groups. And when we got to about 1,200 people, some of the original members of the LinkedIn Real Deal community were quite candidly complaining about the fact that they had answered a question 5 or 6 times, and now it was scrolling down the list, and we were getting people from Europe who were putting in questions in the morning but not getting answers in the afternoon, and we kind of broke it. I mean, I was shocked that we broke it that quickly, but we went from 12 members, 12 original members to 1,200 members in like 4.5, 5 months. And that's when I decided, all right, we got to do something here. And when I started looking around at it, I thought, okay, this really warrants some of my time because people are getting some real value out of this, either some job placements or some real negotiation money savings. People are getting a lot of documents and a lot of private messaging, and individual conversations were spinning off of this that were saving companies money. And I was like, all right, there's too much value here for me not to take a look at this. But the functionality associated with where we were just wasn't really there. And, there was no searchability, so you had to scroll for hours. People were complaining about that. There really wasn't any integration into programs like this where we could do, Zoom related interfaces into LinkedIn groups or anything like that. We certainly couldn't put up any notes or any content, any files or anything like that. And then the biggest problem of all was there was no segmentation of the conversations. So really, all I really wanted to try and do was find something that could handle some of those elements to it, while at the same time giving me some more security. The other thing too that happened that really kind of fried my French fries was I found out that inside of those groups, once you're a member of the group, you can go out and invite other members in, and I wasn't being part of the vetting process. And I found a couple of vendors who had been let in, whether or not it was meant to be or not. And I mean, some of those I had to like publicly execute right there in the middle of the Real Deal, much to the cheers of the crowd, kicking the vendors out because of the lack of vendor in the community. So that was one of the big things too, was the security kind of loophole in the back end. So I started looking at different capabilities and different aspects and different community building teams, and we found Slack, and it works great. It really it's almost everything that we want, almost
Awesome.
everything
Awesome.
out of the gate.
Love it, man. We're going to switch gears because I got a great question from Eddie here,
Yep.
right into information about tariffs. Um, with tariffs currently in place, do you see companies getting in trouble for cutting corners to avoid additional costs?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that the tariff thing is a major problem in supply chain management. Obviously, not in an indirect spend way, but on the direct side, there's a number of conversations taking place inside of the foundry right now around tariffs. If you go up and you do a search for tariffs, you can actually find them and talk more about them if you're not already involved with them. I've been privy to some conversations, not necessarily written down, but I've been privy to some pretty wild conversations about people who are trying to find workarounds, people who are migrating their buying from one country to another where non-tariffs exist, people who are starting to skimp on some service levels and quality controls. Because the reality is that I think that the tariffs are chewing into the margins, and a lot of these consumer-based products or industrial products, they're working on razor-thin margins.
Yeah.
And I understand the theory behind it. I applaud some of the leadership for the theory of bringing some of that back into the states and getting people back to work. I just it's kind of like a giant ball of string. You pull one string and the thing gets tighter somewhere else. I think it would have been nice if we would have thought about it a little bit more and the downstream effects rather than just kind of shotgun blast the thing. But I certainly think that there's a lot of people that are going to have problems because they're cutting corners on the tariff side of the equation and the supply chain side. And I think that there's a possibility for some real increases in costs. I mean, I read something the other day about an iPhone going from, I don't know, whatever ludicrous price that iPhone costs right now, $700 or $800 to, you know, $1,300. And I was like, I got a couple teenage kids. That's going to kill me, you know? So yeah, I'm worried about all of that. Absolutely. Just like everybody else is.
Yeah.
Yep.
Fantastic question. Thanks, Eddie, for that.
Yep.
Next question from Dave. What he's seeing is that there's a lot of procurement orgs that seem to be bringing in individuals and team members from other parts of the business, which brings exceptional value with respect to technical or subject matter knowledge, like engineers, data analysts, all that kind of stuff. But it also brings challenges with the unexpected learning curves that come with it, basically
Yeah.
trying to get them up to speed, introducing them to what procurement really does, you know, something that's sort of beyond the flashy brochure of HR reps and recruiters. Um, what tips can you provide to leaders who are onboarding internal candidates from other departments? And where do you think we can sort of get those people up and running faster?
Wow. That's a pretty thick question, man. Yikes. All right.
It's from Shepard. You knew it was.
Yeah, wow, this was a hot seat. So, all right, I'll jump on the hot seat. Let's dive into that. So, a couple of things. First things first, I think it works in multiple ways.
Yeah,
First off, I think there's a situation in procurement where a lot of times people are given management teams that come in from other places, particularly inside of finance, and now they're in charge of procurement for the first time in their lives, and they've never done procurement before. I had one of those. You know,
right.
I got somebody who was in charge of treasury, who's now, you know, in charge of procurement once in a past life, and you know the learning curve on that is treasury doesn't think like procurement thinks. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So I think it happens at the management level. Then on Dave's question, um, excuse me, from bringing in staff from other places, I'm a big fan of this. A big fan of this. I'm always interested in mixing it up, bringing in different opinions, bringing in new people, rotating them in and rotating them out. I think first and foremost, from a leadership perspective, you can't expect too much from these folks in the first 30, 60, 90 days. They're just coming up to speed. They don't even, you know, in a lot of cases, they don't even know what an RFP is. Let's face it, our industry is riddled with three-letter acronyms. I learn new ones every day, and I've been doing it for 20 years. RPA, hashtag. Um, and so I think that the key is to make sure that you give them enough information around how procurement and sourcing strategy works and how they can contribute to that, but don't take them out of their key element. So if they're a technology engineer or if they're a data analytics scientist, probably one of the biggest places right now is trying to bring data scientists and data analytics people into the fold in procurement and sourcing, so that sourcing teams have a lot more value proposition in that space, right? And data analytics people and sourcing people don't speak procurement. They
Yeah.
speak ones and zeros and cells and, you know, API feeds and data cleansing and modeling and things like that. Don't try to turn a duck into something other than a duck. I think you can teach them the vernacular. I think you can teach them some of the verbiage around it, and try and keep them in their lane, or else they're going to get really frustrated really quick and try and transfer back out of your organization.
Cool.
Yep.
Switching gears a little bit, what do you see as the major gaps in the procurement industry right now, or in procurement teams that no one else is seeing? Like, where are we missing something here? Because I mean, it's very clear that there are some organizations that are totally on top of it, but even they are having trouble filling some of the gaps that are sort of unviewable. Where do you see those major gaps right now?
Wow, good question. Jeez, man, you really got them lined up today, don't you? Um, I think one of the biggest gaps is in talent management and talent development, no question about it. And I think that it's just
Mm,
because there's a massive lack of talent for the amount of work that's out there. I think the people that are out there are very talented. I think that The schools are turning out nice little badge supply chain management kids,
Yeah.
at a record pace. I don't think they know crap when they get out of those schools for the most part. That's probably going to hurt me somewhere down the road, but I think it's true. Um, and I think that they have a learning curve as well. I think that certainly one of the biggest gaps is associated with talent management and getting people up to speed inside of your organizations and finding good talent. I think that one of those things that's going to happen from the gaps in the talent is there's going to be a very large migration, in my opinion, from a build it to a buy it mentality inside of procurement.
Yeah.
I think procurement's one of the redheaded stepchilds in the back office suite. I think that a lot of those back office suites have already done their migration to uh, the buy it versus build it model. If you think about places like finance where they've offshored AP and accounts payable and receivable to cost beneficial shores. Certainly legal. I mean, legal's outsourced everything to outside legal counsel, right? There's a lot of organizations where HR has done that as well, with background checks and recruiting and everything in HR is outsourced these days. I think procurement's going to have to go the same route. I think that if you're going to get the talent that you need to get in order to put up the deliverables, that's one of the places where people are going to have to go. Is they're going to have to go to an outside model, and I think that's something that's being missed right now. Is the migration and the adoption of some hybrid of outside knowledge and staff augmentation. Again, still trying to build it. I still see people trying to build it. That's definitely one place. I think that another place is analytics. Spend analytics. I'll just say it till I'm dead. Spend analytics. I don't think people are nearly intelligent as they need to be. I don't think people are putting enough data scientists and data analysts inside of their procurement organizations and sourcing organizations. Primarily on the indirect side. I think the supply chain management side is much better at this than the indirect side. But the indirect side, I think, is just woefully overdue for better analytics associated with control points for savings. And I know tons of people who can't even get all their spend data together, Mark. It's scary. I mean, there's plenty of aggregation tools out there today. I think that another place where I think people are still struggling with is how to show their value proposition to senior leadership so that they can staff appropriately.
Yep.
That's another place where I just don't think procurement people are really good at selling their own story,
Yeah.
Whereas on the flip side of the table, I think sales teams are fantastic at spreading crap across pieces of toast and selling it, right? So as far as how much value propositions their teams are putting in, right? So I think that, listen, the way I see it is you've been given a gift, which is you've got a procurement organization that is directly removing dollars towards the bottom line. Whatever your profit margin is, let's say your profit margin is 10%, right, for your company. You should be walking in the door and saying, hey, I just saved $1 million, which is $10 million worth of revenue. How many people would you put against a new piece of business on $10 million worth of revenue? Now give me my damn analyst, right? Or give me my new category manager or something like that. I don't think people that, build out the value proposition enough. So those are a couple places where I think that there's some people missing some things.
Yeah.
One last thing, I'm going to completely rant on this. I'm going to go back to technology for a second. If you are not paying attention to what's going on, and we did this yesterday in the Procurement Foundry, we had our first micro event in the RPA channel, and we had probably 15 or 16 people in there talking. If you're not paying attention to what's going on in the RPA and the automation side of procurement right now, and looking at companies like UiPath and things like that, you have another thing coming. It's wow. The things you can do with it today are scary, and I think that the way to automation, and I think one of the value and ways to differentiate yourself is definitely knowing that and being the guy or lady who introduces that to your company versus being potentially sidelined because of it.
Yeah, totally agree with you. I think a couple of the things that I picked up on there that I think are really valuable are data scientists, right? Like just having the talent internally within your procurement team to be able to not just move data, but interpret data. I think that's a big gap that I'm seeing.
Yeah.
And the other thing that you said was selling the value, right? Like how are we selling the value of procurement internally? And you and I both know a procurement executive that did a fantastic job of this, where one of his first hires when he started, he actually hired a marketing person so that he could develop a marketing plan and a marketing program to be able to market their procurement team. And that in and of itself, I think, was a brilliant move. And that person's turned out to be an amazing leader and now is leading a bunch of other things. But having the marketing ability and background as well to be able to sell internally, I think, is a big thing. We're going to have to change our approach internally to more of a sales/marketing approach. I mean, we can develop the relationships, but if we start to do that one relationship at a time, we're just not going to be able to scale as fast as we should. So being able to sell and market internally is a big deal. I'm going to switch gears real quick. Great question from Paul Goodwin. Paul, fantastic. Is blockchain a real thing, or is it simply a buzzword as far as its impact on procurement reporting and practices?
Yeah, blockchain's a real thing, man. I mean, nobody invests, $400 billion in something that's not real, to the best of my knowledge. At least companies like IBM and, Microsoft and Oracle and, you know, I think the problem is I think that a lot of people equate blockchain to cryptocurrency, right? And cryptocurrency is just one of the functionalities that comes with blockchain as a form of payment associated with blockchain. And I'm not a blockchain expert by any stretch of the imagination. I have literally lost my hat on a couple of high flyer cryptocurrencies, which I can't even pronounce their names, and I have no idea whether or not they still have value or not because I just gave up. Again, oh, by the way, a public service announcement. If you are putting money into cryptocurrencies, literally put like 1/20th of what you thought you wanted to put in. It's going to be enough to be able to walk away from the table, which is what I use at the craps table as well. So don't put anything in. Don't go out there and jam your 401k in cryptocurrency.
Sounds like you have a personal issue around this. You want to share about that, Mike? What happened? What happened?
I bought a cryptocurrency named after like a dog or something. I don't know. I don't know what the hell happened to it. It turned out to be an actual dog. So I was like, all right, great. Anyway, so blockchain is definitely real. I think that some of the early uses of blockchain that I'm really excited about are things like the investment of a blockchain down in Latin America and South America associated with the record, uh, uh, the incorporation of the history of land ownership records being put onto the blockchain, so that people aren't just getting stumbled over by it and somebody shows up and goes, hey, I own this land, right? And I think that happens in the United States as well, but in Latin America and South America, it's just hideous. And one of the examples, I forgot who's investing in it, but that's a really interesting use of things like blockchain. The use of ownership of software licensing, I think, has a really big play in blockchain. So that, I mean, I'm pretty damn sure over my 20 years of buying technology, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that I have bought at one company 6 times the amount of Adobe that I needed because I couldn't prove that I actually owned the crap before, right? And it's like, well, do you have, the ownership certificates back in the day when they used to actually print ownership? I'm like, ownership certificates? We've moved 7 times since we've lived, I can't find a box with that stuff. It's at Iron Mountain somewhere. Who the hell knows where those are, right? Oh, well, then you got to buy it again. All right, and then, okay, then I moved to another division and they had ownership rights to something. And I think that's where blockchain has a lot of value. I think that one caveat to that, I think that inside of blockchain, there's something called smart contracts. Smart contracts are, and again, I'm about to jump over my skis on a knowledge base. Smart contracts, to me at least, seem like a way for a piece of software code to verify that something has happened in the marketplace and that contract now is eligible for execution. Meaning a supplier in China just finalized an order and it's sitting on a loading dock somewhere, and you still have the money to actually pay for the damn thing. So that contract's now going to execute inside of the code, inside of blockchain, and it's going to perform that task. Now, how you actually pay for all that crap is a whole different thing. Do not buy the cryptocurrency named after a dog. Highly don't recommend that because your rolled steel will cost you 500 times what it was supposed to. But the transaction processing and the verification of the fact that you actually have a currency in place, I mean, a contract in place, and that the machines are actually verifying the contract, kind of a la the NASDAQ.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the thing. I don't think it's going anywhere. I think it's in the very early stages of development, and I like where it's going. I really do.
Yeah. Exactly.
For as
Uh,
much as I know, I mean, listen, I'm not. There's no way. I mean, I know this much about blockchain after 37 webinars.
totally. For the listeners and viewers, just so that you may want to check out this book. It's a book by a guy named Magnus Lind, and he wrote a book called what is it called? Finance Unleashed, I think it's called.
Yeah.
Check that out. He talks about tracking like dollars through blockchain to be able to ensure the dollars are getting where you thought they would go. And it's way more than that. I'm botching the description. Anyway, if you want to get a better description of how blockchain is changing the way that finance looks at supply chain management, pick up that book. Really, really good book called Finance Unleashed by a guy named Magnus Lind. Really good question here by Inigo Montoya, who states that you killed my father. Negotiations are taking too much time. Technology like e-sourcing and CLM are old school. Traditional negotiation planning and strategy is also old school. Phone calls, Microsoft Word, old school. What new technologies are you seeing that drive collaboration to reduce the cycle time in negotiations? Are they more viable than our old school methods?
Good Lord Almighty, are you kidding me? I thought this was going to be softball questions. All right, let's run back through that again because there's a whole bunch of that. So, amazing question. I'm not sure I completely understand it. I'm gonna try and paraphrase what you're saying. Mark, you tell me if you think this is right. Basically, the older techniques,
Yeah,
as well as the older, hey, let's take a Microsoft Word document and pass it back and forth 18 times on Redline. Thank God you can track markups, right? Um, are those technologies kind of outdated? Is the RFP process outdated? And what, if anything, is out there on the horizon that could help? Is that the question? Am I
basically. Yeah.
close? I'm
Yeah.
close,
I
right?
would say that's pretty close.
All right, great. Wow. Jeez.
Why don't I kick this off? Because I've done quite a bit of research around AI negotiations and how that's going.
Yeah,
It, it
I was gonna talk about AI based negotiations. I think again back to smart contracts inside of blockchain code.
yeah,
Uh, I I I think that the machine. I think that the technology is going to take it so far, but I think that at some point humans still need to decide whether or not the outcomes are going to be beneficial to them and their companies. Right? Somebody's trying to buy something and somebody's trying to sell something, and the machines, quite honestly, don't care. They don't. They don't. In my opinion, they don't
they're
really
not
care.
designed to.
They're not designed to care, right? And then when they do start to care, there's been a whole set of movies.
Skynet.
Exactly. When they do care, we all going to start running for cover anyway. So, but for now, they don't care. And I think that at the end of the day, I think that they're going to need to. I think they're going to. I think that there's still the human side of it. I think the technologies are evolving on that. You can talk a little bit about AI if you want. Um, I'm seeing really interesting things, like, and I'm not trying to make a sales pitch for anybody. I think that real-time automated bidding processes for tail spend management for companies like Fair Market
Yeah.
are really sexy, man. I mean, I had hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars to spend that I carved out on the tail spend side and said, I'm never going to get to it. I don't have the staff for it. And now through a nice little automated process, through a tool that bolts into your P2P system, I can do real time bidding and get more quotes for tailspin than I was getting for my big stuff. and they can facilitate the transaction. Stuff like that, super sexy to me, because now I can take that and put it under my spend under management. So I think that there's some stuff that's the AI negotiation that Mark's going to talk about in a second is bleeding edge to me, widget and hocus pocus and Ouija board stuff. I don't think we're there yet, to be completely candid. I don't think we're going to be there for a while. Although, don't get me wrong, Mark, I love your content. This is weird. My screen, Mark's right next to me, so I keep pointing to him, and I realize he's not in the room with me. So anyway, sorry. So I think that some of that stuff is 5 to 10 years out, and I think some of that stuff is right here today. But I think the problem is that there's a lot of people in our organizations that are going 500 miles an hour and don't even know what the hell's out there that they could grab onto.
Yeah, totally agree with you. There's the crazy thing about where AI actually is it's actually way further ahead than people think, but it's in like these little pockets that exist all over the place. There's a guy who runs shoot, and the name of the company escapes me now. I'll have to remember it. But his name's Matt Dixon. He actually wrote a fantastic book, if you get an opportunity to read it, called The Challenger Sale. He comes from CEB Gartner World. He was one of their chief research scientists. And his role right now is chief product. Oh, yeah, there we go. It's Tether, TEHR. And what they are doing is basically AI. I'm going to botch this. Don't tell Matt I'm botching this. But
So you're doing great. You're doing great. Just keep it up.
AI automation of conversation. So what they do is on the CRM side of things, if a customer has an issue with a product and traditionally they would call and say, hey, here's my problem, they would do it on the computer. But now what they're doing is automating the conversation so that you would never know. Like, you can tell when a bot is talking to you when you're going into a customer complaint issue. But now their AI is so advanced that you actually can't even tell that it's not a person. So
Yeah.
where I see negotiations going eventually is to get to that point where you've got, especially for the tactical stuff, you've got a bot on the other side that has all the parameters built in, knows what to do, what not to do. Emotion is removed from the decision making quality, and so it becomes a very logical decision process on getting to end goal. I think that's eventually where it's going to end up. Are we there yet? Absolutely not. Are we going to get there very quickly? I think we are. I think we're going to get to a point where AI drives a lot of our, at least for sure, our tactical negotiations, and removes us from the smaller spend kind of stuff, the less strategic stuff, which I think is actually really, really good, because then that means we get to move our supply chain resources to other areas, right? And we get out of that tactical role, move those people into strategic role, and I think it's just better for everyone. Comment here on that. It sounds like Google Assistant will start negotiating on my behalf. Yeah, I mean, essentially, that's the point where we're gonna get to, right? It's gonna get there eventually. Are we there? Absolutely not. But will we get there? For sure, we will. Absolutely.
Yeah, I had a conversation 6 months ago. No, 5 months ago. 4 months ago. I don't know. 4 months ago, I think it was. Although time's going by at record speeds now. I had a conversation, and I thought the guy was off his meds. I really did. Love him. Known him 25 years. Having a conversation about his guy who just left IBM. He was part of their AI group over there at IBM. Working with Watson and doing things like that. And I think they're doing amazing things with Watson. And his current project is he is working on a bot / AI element who I don't know, we'll call Mark, right? Who sits alongside you as your virtual assistant during a negotiation process, and who is doing all of the tactical stuff of getting the information and getting the documents and doing the first rev of redlining for you, because they already figured out what you want from it. But what's really interesting is that that bot or that AI instance, you dial them into your calls and or your meetings, and they're monitoring the emails, and this is happening now in those call centers that Mark talked about. I'm still pointing at you, and it's still not there. It's still active in these softwares that are in these call centers now. Is it's analyzing and interpreting your mood, right?
Wow.
And so if you call into a call center right now and you're irate, you get person B because they've had special training. Can you imagine being on one side of the negotiation table and with 70, 80, 90% accuracy, being able to incorporate an AI bot who's working alongside of you, who's watching nonverbal communication signals from the person across the table, interpreting their writing skills and emails, uh, analyzing the marketplace to determine whether or not there's flexibility in the negotiation or not, and reporting this all back to you as the lead negotiator to position your company in a place. And I was like, this is 4 months ago, 5 months ago. I thought he was off his meds. And since then, I've since called him back and I've been like, bro, how do I get some money in on that thing? I got about 7 shekels left. I'd like to give you 3 of them because I think that that's a reality. I think that that's where this whole thing is going. I don't think that you'll necessarily be spun out of the equation, but I don't think the robots are going to take over contract negotiation and vendor management anytime soon. Please do not think that. I think that it's going to augment the existing staff so they
Absolutely.
can actually get to the workload that they've been asked to do for the last 10 years and not had time to do it. And I think that the inputs that they'll be able to give you is just going to be mind blowing, mind blowing.
Yep, exactly. Totally agree with you. We're going to go back to an earlier question. We're going to dive a little bit deeper into it.
Where are
Paula
the
wants,
interesting questions? Like,
yeah, these are good questions,
where's
right?
the best restaurant in Manhattan? Like, where are the easy? Where are the layups,
There's no
man?
easy. There's
God,
no
this
layups.
is killing me.
We've
Damn.
conditioned people ahead of time to basically put you on the hot seat. So this is good.
Holy cow.
Okay,
This is
so
like, I got to think about these. Go ahead.
we're going to go back to an earlier question on selling procurement internally to the C-suite. So
Yeah.
one of the things that keeps popping up for a bunch of people over and over and over again is C-suite questioning quote unquote savings not being a real number, right? Like, how did you come up with this? Where was this generated? How does this relate to EBITDA? And so a lot of the savings in CapEx or costs that are direct pass through are suddenly, they suddenly just don't count. It's either EBITDA or go home. Cost avoidance, don't even bother coming, talking to me. We don't want to talk about it. So how are we combating that, and how are we selling that specific value internally?
Yeah. How are we? That's a damn good question. Um, listen, you got to have a relationship with the people that you're reporting these numbers to, and find out what makes them tick, right? Um, I I I understand the argument around the fact that cost avoidance isn't a savings, right? But cost avoidance has a value proposition to it, right?
Absolutely, it does.
There's absolutely no way that you can tell me, all right, listen, on all new acquisitions, because it's not in the P&L from last year, and it didn't cost $100 last year, now it costs 97, so you saved me $3, so thank you very much. There's no way that you can tell me that, hey, the head of networking just went out and wanted to spin up some Cisco stuff
Mm-hmm.
and got a quote for 47%, and you moved it to 62, but it's a new buy, so that 16% on $1 million that you just saved, that $160,000 is cost avoidance. So it's got no value proposition in it, right? I mean, you want to figure out a way to get rid of your really good help. That's a way to do it, right? But I think that there has to be some middle ground there that shows the value proposition of it. Here's the other thing too, folks. I don't know how much you're going to believe that, how much you're going to buy into this or not. I got to be honest with you. I don't think savings is a really big issue anymore in procurement. I think it's second fiddle, maybe even third seat now to risk mitigation.
Mm.
Right? I am inundated with people who are in contracts that they signed for 3 years, and can't get out of because nobody knew to negotiate a termination for convenience clause or a drip termination for convenience clause, meaning, all right, I'll pay you for the first year, but after the second year, I get 50% out. After the third year, I get 25% out. Something, give me something, right? Um, Liability, and I've said this before, I'll say it again, I'll shout it from the damn rooftops. The liability contracts and software as a service as an industry is a complete and utter joke, and you can take that comment to the bank. Um, there isn't a software as a service company or service infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, you name it, as a service, with enough liability cap on anything that they're giving you, in my opinion.
In
Which
terms
is
of data
why,
security?
right? Well, let's think about that for a second. 90% of these guys are in Series C funding. If they don't make a nut and grow, they're going to be out. And you can't put the premiums in place that you want to put in place for things like GDPR security, right? So I think that the problem is that um, they liability clauses are garbage, and they
So
I'm raising
what do you do? Do you carve that out and then just get extra insurance on it?
amen, amen, amen. See, you listened to my goddamn post, didn't you? Yep. So I went on a drunken rampage with like 3 glasses of red wine over the holidays, and finally said, listen, if you can't get the liability clauses that you want, strip it out of the equation completely. Let's remove liability cap out of every contract, and let's go back to your risk management people and buy some more umbrella insurance that you want. If you think you need $5 million, figure out how much the $5 million worth of additional umbrella insurance is going to cost from your risk people or your insurance people. If you can't find them, go find them, buy them a cup of coffee, bring them some donuts, scotch, whatever your risk people do, and have a conversation about how much insurance costs for your company, right? And figure out, okay, if I can't get the vendor to insure me properly, I'll self-insure myself. And then I got to take out of the cost of the software because you suck. You're not going to give me the insurance policy that I want for basic things like negligence. Are you going to cap gross negligence on your employees to one-time sales? I got a 75,000. I got
I
to
think
find
we should cap it at PO value, Mike.
yeah, PO value. Yeah, all right, that's great. That's great. Mark's on the take
That's
from all the
right.
software
Classic
companies.
procurement joke right there.
Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah. So I don't even remember where this question started. It started with, um,
How are we selling this internally in terms of savings
okay.
and all that
So
kind of
so
stuff?
yeah. So I don't think, going back to the beginning, which is how we're selling this internally. I don't think that savings is the way to nirvana anymore. I think that you sell yourself as an expert in procure to pay, like you're supposed to be. Let's say everybody I talk to, I'm a procure to pay expert. Okay, great. What do you know about payment and treasury? Crickets, right? Go down the hall, find your treasury department, find out what the hell they do, and figure out how to get prompt payment into all of your contracts so that you can get better return on the money than it's sitting in your bank account at 4.5% cost of capital. That's value to me. There's so many other places you can find value now, as opposed to trying to save money and arguing with your CPO about how much you saved and how much you avoided. And you gotta put it all in front of them and say, listen, yeah, I did save some money. Yeah, I did cost avoid some money. And yeah, I don't want to take credit for it because I can't stand people who, I see him on LinkedIn. You all see him on LinkedIn. I saved $300 million on $1 billion. I'm like, you saved 30%. Wow, you're a stud. You should be hired by everybody. Um, I think that you got to be real about your numbers. And if your leadership team isn't, if you're banking your value on just the savings number and you're focused on your savings number, you need to pull back, reevaluate what you're presenting as your value proposition. Stop talking about savings, start talking about overall value, risk mitigation, and cash management. I don't see enough people playing the cash flow game. I don't. And there's so much money to be had there, right? There's so much money in prompt payment. People are desperate for their cash. Go get 3% on 15 days or 1.5% on 15 days. 1.5% on 15 days, you're going to be making money on the money. I just, the savings thing for me, it's a tough pull. I don't,
I
I,
hear what you're saying, and I mean at the same time, I also think that uh, there are different organizations that are at different maturities as well, right? So you've got like an executive team that's conditioned to believe that procurement's value is in savings. And so if that's the case, when that comes up, you've still got to play that game. You've also, like you said, you've got to play the other game as well, and you've got to start developing that in terms of your skill set. And you still have to learn how to show the savings, how to show the value in terms of just dollars and cents. So yeah, I think you're right. Absolutely, no question. Sort of at a broad, overarching level, we need to get away from savings being our only value proposition. And if you're a listener and you're listening right now and you're in a position where your senior executive team is, I mean, that's how they see procurement as adding value, you've still got to play that game because that's how they're perceiving you. So your job is to play that game and then change their perception.
yeah,
There's a number of different ways that you can do that. We won't
yeah.
get into it in this discussion, but you've got to try and shape their perception over time. Also, side note from Paula, you were asking about the best restaurants in New York: Shabu Tatsu, Union Square Cafe, and John's of 12th.
John's on 12th is a good restaurant.
There
Nice
you
call. That's a good pull. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
go.
Can you put that, if you're in the foundry, can you put that into the water cooler? I'm going to try one of those tonight because I'm here. Um, I would love to head to one of those this evening. So thank you very much.
Awesome.
Uh, what else we got, man? Come on.
Okay, quick question.
10 minutes left. We got to get some answers.
Yeah, we're gonna get a good one here from Inigo Montoya again. He's dodging the law, so he has to send this via text. Supplier discovery. What is your opinion on Tealbook or other solutions, or is the network still the best solution?
Um, I think everything has its place. I think that Tealbook has its place. I think what Stephanie's doing is great. From what I know of it, I've seen it once. It sounds like a good product. I think there's a lot of people that are getting value out of that. Um, I I think I like, and again, not to go back to it again, I like the fair market model more, which is, hey, find everybody who makes this chair and send them a bid request, and I want 37 bid requests, right? I like to have as many horses in the race as possible because I think the pack runs faster when there's more horses.
Yeah.
Um, but that said, I think that there's a place for supplier um, uh, search tools. What I don't like, and I'll be completely candid, is I don't like the Ariba marketplace. You know what I mean? It's a pay for play thing. I think that's crap. Um, and I think that you're going to get the big boys who are willing to pay. I think that Ariba taking a pound of flesh out of that and trying to be, I don't know, some type of business brokerage house is a bunch of crap. I think that Amazon for Business is an interesting way to curb your people, but I don't think it's a savings opportunity right now. I think that, but at the end of the day, um, I, I built the procurement foundry for God's sakes. I mean, come on. I think that the way to go is to ask the network. I think that I want human interaction, right?
Subtle plug. Subtle
So,
plug.
right? I think that
Very good. I think, guys, I think the best option is for you
I
to
think the best option is
sign
my
your life
option.
up to the procurement.
I do, right? I ask the people in the network. I mean, I don't know, and then judge for yourself. Have a private message with somebody and say, is this guy full of crap or is this girl full of
I
crap?
totally agree. I mean, the value that we have in the procurement foundry, just in terms of like people's knowledge, is insane.
We did the
Insane.
math. We did the math last night just so that I would know. We have 7,129 years of experience in the procurement foundry right now.
Holy,
Right now, today,
holy smokes.
right? And we have $179 billion of spend under management with the people inside of the procurement foundry based on what they gave us for information when they signed up for their membership rights. So are you going to find everything right now? No, you're not going to find everything. And do you need to is it some blend of Tealbook and Procurement Foundry, yeah, but are there tools out there now versus sitting at your desk and going, damn, I have no idea if I'm getting a good deal or not? Those days are over. Over. That question shouldn't be asked anymore. If you're sitting there asking yourself that question, you're not plugged into what's going on inside of these private networks like the one that you're a member of now, and hopefully that it grows out to be. So, yeah, grow. Gather, share, grow. Right. And the other thing too that I would ask is, if you come into a community like this and you start asking, uh, pay it forward. We don't like vampires. I've said it, I've texted it, I've emailed it. I can't stand vampires. We're monitoring who's involved and who's just sucking down knowledge, and we're looking for people to help other people. So if you're not doing that, what are you doing? um, I like the knowledge aspect of it, but pay it forward. If somebody helps you, help them back. Help somebody else.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that they have their place. I think that everything has its place. It's part of the knowledge experience. The more knowledge you can get, whether it's based on finding suppliers and then getting referrals. I mean, do you go out on the internet and pick the top 3 plumbers in your town, or do you get a referral for a plumber? You do both. It's great. So continue to do both, right?
Yep.
I like how I'm getting close to this thing. I'm starting to actually wake up, baby. It's an
Yeah,
hour.
you're starting to
I'm
like
alive.
rant here. I feel like,
I love the rant.
you know what? We're going to close off. We're 4 minutes left. I think we're getting too close to your ranting time. So we're actually
Meds are
going to
wearing
shut
off. I got to get some more meds.
it down. For everyone that joined, thank you so much for joining. This was our first go. This was our first go at the AMA. I think it worked really well. Got a couple of questions that we couldn't get to, so my apologies for that. Next time we'll try and get to more as we go, but I think the discussion was really good. Mike, I think you did a fantastic job. Well done. Congratulations.
Thanks, man. I can't
And
believe
by the way,
we're
we've recorded this for everyone. So we're going to be posting a link to access this interview on Procurement Foundry. So and we're probably going to do it later today, I would think. It'll be a Dropbox link so that you guys can access it. And we'll be doing that every single time. So that when you want to find out a solution, or if you miss an AMA, or for whatever reason you can't make it, we're going to make sure that you still have access to that knowledge base, because that's really important to us, that we're keeping track of this and making sure that we're getting as much out there to you guys as possible. If you're not already a member of Procurement Foundry, and this is something that you just joined as an invitation from someone else, please join. We'd love to have you. It's a big part of what we're doing, is just sharing knowledge and sharing ideas, and just making procurement better and making procurement people better overall. And Mike, thank you so much for starting such an amazing community, man. I think it's growing exponentially, and we're gaining more and more people. Any final words that you want to close off with? No.
yeah, absolutely. First off, Mark,
Yeah, internet connection's unstable. Well, at least
I'm going to say it anyway.
say it
Mark, are you
anyway.
back?
Yeah.
Awesome. You're back. Great, 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 great. You just did like a Max Headroom thing on my computer. Really cool. So first things first, thanks to Mark. We've partnered up with Mark from a Procurement Foundry perspective. We couldn't have a better partner in this space. Mark's followers and his approach to this type of stuff, candid, kind of off the cuff type of stuff, is exactly what we're looking for in original content. So thank you to Mark for that. He's been an amazing partner already and continues to be every day. Gives us a ton of his time, which I know is extremely valuable. So thank you to them. Next, thank you to all of the supporters so far at Procurement Foundry. Get in, collaborate, meet peers, get on the donut thing and the meet new people thing, and certainly meet new people and collaborate. And if you see something, or if you want something that you haven't seen yet, by all means, send us a message. And I think we've got a channel saying "Make the community better," something like that, or just private message me. I don't care. I don't sleep anymore. And then also, the last thing I'll say is, we've got an amazing outpour of community leaders who are building chapters all around the world already, just in 3 weeks. Go to those events, network, meet people, find jobs, talk about what's going on, and be present. That's all I can ask for. So thank you, Mark. I really appreciate it.
You bet, buddy. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Enjoy the rest of your day. We'll be posting this up later today, so keep an eye out for that. Any ideas for any upcoming AMAs, just shoot us a message on Procurement Foundry. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.